everyone, welcome back to one another session of English Succour. Today let's learn about lesson number 6 of Vistas on the Face of It by Suzanne Hill. A brief introduction about the author. Suzanne Hill, an English author, was born in the year 1942. Among her favorite genre include fiction and non-fiction works. Among her popular works are Woman in Black, The Mist in the Mirror, and I'm the King of the Castle. She has received the Somerset Maugham Award for her work I'm the King of the Castle in the year 1971. Story introduction. This story, that is a short play, deals with the sense of loss and a sense of isolation and how to overcome this. The story focuses on the theme that the actual pain caused by a physical impairment is often much less than the sense of alienation or separation felt by the person. People who suffer from disabilities must look at the bright side of things. They must adapt with the realities of life bravely. Disabled persons need support and acceptance, and they do not need pity or sympathy of the society or the people. Above all, the story highlights the fact that appearances are deceptive. So let's get started with the story. Before we start, we see that this is a play featuring an old man, Mr. Lamb, who has got a tin leg, and a small boy, Derry, with a burnt face. Derry is extremely withdrawn and defiant, who hesitates to meet people as he thinks that the people make him feel embarrassed by commenting on his ugly-looking face. Then we see that Derry coincidentally meets Mr. Lamb, who always looks at the bright side of the things. So the story begins with the description of the scene. The narrator describes the setting of scene 1. The location is Mr. Lamb's garden. One can occasionally hear the birds singing and the low sound of the tree leaves. Derry, a young boy, enters the garden of Mr. Lamb hesitatingly and hesitantly. When he comes out of the bushes, he is extremely startled or surprised to hear Mr. Lamb talking to him. Then Mr. Lamb warns him about the crab apples that usually fell in the long grass from the tree above. Derry was shocked on hearing a voice. He asked as to who it was, and then Mr. Lamb introduced himself and also said that small sour apples known as crab apples had fallen on the ground, and if Derry would not be careful while walking through the grass, he could trip over them and get hurt. Derry said that he didn't know that someone was present in the garden. He thought it to be an empty garden, and even the house seemed empty to him. Mr. Lamb, when he found Derry feeling a little shy and not comfortable, Mr. Lamb tried to comfort him by saying that the house was empty as he was out in the garden. He also asked him not to be afraid, and then Derry wanted to leave the place immediately. Mr. Lamb tried to stop him and said that there was no need to leave the garden just because of him. He also told him that he kept the gate always open for people. It was only Derry who jumped the wall. Although there was no need, he could enter the garden through the gate. Derry got angry for being pointed at like that. He also clarified that he hadn't come to steal anything from there. Mr. Lamb agreed by saying that at many times apple had been stolen by other young boys, and that Derry was not so young, but still Derry wanted to leave, and Mr. Lamb told him not to be afraid of him and asked him to stay there for a while. However, Daddy told him that he was not afraid of anyone, rather, people were afraid of him, he told. Then Mr. Lamb asked him the reason for that. He told him that he knew what people thought and how they behaved in front of him. Mr. Lamb questioned him about what others thought of him. Daddy said that people got scared on seeing his face. Some considered it bad or ugly face, while some other even took pity on him by saying that he was a poor boy. And then he added that they were all fake. Actually, they all were afraid of his face. He even got scared of his own face when he looked into the mirror. He added that Mr. Lamb will also feel pity on him, but in his heart, he will also be scared of Jerry. Then we see Mr. Lamb said that he wasn't afraid of Derry. Derry was shocked to hear that. Then Mr. Lamb told him that he would bring a ladder and a stick, he said, and he would like to pick fine and ripe crab apples as they made a good jelly. He also told him that in the month of September, they get ripe and become a magic fruit having orange and golden color. He also asked him to join him in doing so. Then he pointed him for changing the topic just like other people did, because just before this they were talking about how people react to his burnt face. So Derry didn't like the way Mr. Lamb changed the subject. He added that Mr. Lamb didn't ask him about his face because he was afraid of asking about it. Derry got annoyed and said that he didn't like the company of people. Mr. Lamb guessed that maybe his face got burnt in some fire. Derry told him that it was due to acid that had burnt half of his face, and he was so grieved and he was so sad that he kept on repeating that acid ate his face and that it would never get ever cured and he would never look different. Mr. Lamb did not agree with him. Derry thought that he was not interested in his story. To this, Mr. Lamb said that he was interested in each and every creation of God. He pointed out at a wall and asked him, what did he see beyond it? Derry replied that there were weeds or unwanted plants. Mr. Lamb explained that there were a number of plants in his garden. There were flowers, trees, and herbs. Some plants were considered good and some were called unwanted plants or weed. It was not because they were different. All of them were green in color. It was about how people considered them to be, herbs or weeds. In reality, they all were same, just like Derry and himself. Derry did not agree to this view of Mr. Lamb. Mr. Lamb told him that there was no difference at all. He was young and Mr. Lamb was old, he said. And Mr. Lamb, he had got a burnt face and Mr. Lamb had got a tin leg. These things were not so important and so they didn't make any difference. They asked him the reason behind his tin leg. After a little while, Derry became a little comfortable with Mr. Lamb and then he asked this question. Mr. Lamb replied that it got damaged in an explosion many years ago, and further he informed him that kids teased him by calling him Lamey Lamb. Derry said that he could cover the tin leg with his trousers so that no one could see that he has got a tin leg. Mr. Lamb to this said that it did not bother him much, as one day people would get tired of teasing him and would start discussing something else. Derry showed his face in reply to this statement of Mr. Lamb. And then Mr. Lamb suggested that things like crab apples, weeds, spiders, and the tall sunflowers could also be some of the other things that people would probably look at and discuss. Overall, he meant to say that there are different things people can look at. Then Derry commented that the other things mentioned by Mr. Lamb were things. That means they were non-living things. Mr. Lamb replied that all the things were related to each other. Just like beauty is related to the beast. For example, a beautiful creation is related to ugliness. In other words, Derry was confused. Mr. Lamb asked for Derry's opinion. Derry replied that often he had heard people saying that beauty is not related to one's appearance. Rather, inner beauty is a real beauty. Even a handsome man is the one who does something good rather than one who looks good. He said that once in a story he heard that once there was a beautiful girl loved a beast for who he was and kissed him, which turned the beast into a handsome prince, and he wouldn't have changed if she hadn't kissed him. But then he said that he won't change. Mr. Lamb said that Derry was right at that he would never be able to change his burnt face. Derry said that no one would ever kiss him because of his burnt face, ugly face. Even his mother kissed him on the good side or the unburnt part of his face. He did not like this at all. He said he didn't care even if nobody kissed him. Mr. Lamb asked him that did Terry ever want to kiss someone? Derry asked him what he was talking about. Mr. Lamb said that probably Terry wanted to kiss pretty girls who had long hair and large eyes, or other people whom Derry loved. Derry replied to this that no one would ever allow him to do so. Mr. Lamb said that this was unpredictable. No one can tell. Derry said that he will never look different. When he will be as old as Mr. Lamb, then also he will have only half a face. That means other face would remain burnt. Mr. Lamb said that yes, he will always have half a face, but the world was full of so many things to look at. So he must look at its beauty. Derry questioned him. That was the garden the whole world for him? Lamb said that when he was present in the garden, then the garden was his world. He then questioned him whether his leg hurt him. Lamb replied that didn't hurt. It never pained. Derry asked him if he suffered pain when he lost his leg. Lamb said that it pained back then. He then asked him if it pained now, where the artificial leg is stuck into the real one or where the joint is. Lamb said that sometimes it pained, especially in wet weather, but it was not that important. Derry said that he would understand what he meant by all this, as he had heard people saying that you should take a lesson from those who suffer in pain and never cry or complain about their problems. Mr. Lamb said that he didn't say so. Then Derry continued that people told him to look at those people who were in worse conditions than him. They told him that he might have become blind or be born deaf or be handicapped and have to remain in a wheelchair. He may even have been born with mental disorder. Mr. Lamb said that yes, it was true, and that Derry knew so much. Derry said that all this would not change his face. All these real facts were not going at all to change his face. One day, as he was waiting at a bus, then he describes an incident when he was waiting for a bus at a bus stop. A woman passed by him. He heard her telling another woman that he had, just looking at his face, that he had such a terrible face that only his mother could love him and no one else could. Mr. Lamb to this asked him that did he believe what he heard or what people say? Jerry stressed that he heard it. Mr. Lamb asked that was this the only thing he had heard from someone? Derry said that no, he had heard so many things too. Lamb suggested him to shut his ears, that he should not listen to the things people say. He should ignore all this. Then Derry found Lamb's words strange and added that he couldn't understand his questions. Mr. Lamb said that he liked to talk and also liked the company of others. He also told him that there was no need to answer him, and as the gates were always open, he could leave any moment if he wanted to. Derry did not leave, and he seemed unsure of it. Mr. Lamb said that there was a beehive in one of the trees. People considered the buzzing sound of the bees to be a noise, but for him it was a song sung by the bees. Derry explained that he had liked the place from outside, and so he had entered into the garden. Mr. Lamb questioned that would he have entered had he seen Mr. Lamb, to which Derry replied in the negative. Derry said that if he would have entered his garden even after knowing that he was there, it would have been without his permission, or it would be like trespassing. Mr. Lamb said that was not the real reason. Derry said that he did not like going near people as they got afraid of him and stared at him. Mr. Lamb suggested that he could lock himself in a room forever. He then narrated a story about a man who locked himself in his room as he was afraid of everything. The man thought that he would meet with an accident with a bus. He would catch infection from someone. A donkey would kick him to death. The lightning may hit him, or he may die because the girl whom he loved may leave him, or he may even slip off a banana and people would laugh at him. So, in order to safeguard himself from all such situations or incidents, he locked himself in his room. Derry surprisingly asked Mr. Lamb if he locked himself forever. Mr. Lamb replied that no, he did so for a while only, as he could not escape death. Derry asked him what happened next. Mr. Lamb then continued, and he said that a picture fell on his head from the wall and he died. This made him laugh a lot, and he said that Mr. Lamb narrated strange talks. And Mr. Lamb said that they were strange for some people. And Derry asked what Mr. Lamb did all day. He wanted to know how did he spend his time. He just replied that he sat in the sun reading books. He said that the house was full of books. Derry looked at the house and said that there weren't any curtains, or the windows were completely without curtains. Mr. Lamb replied that he didn't like curtains. He liked transparency, light, darkness, and the wind too. Derry added that he also liked all of them, and he also liked the sound of the rain falling on the roof of his house. And Mr. Lamb commented that Derry was present-minded boy as he could hear from his views. Derry said that his family worried about him. They just bother a lot for him, that what would he do in the future with a burnt face. Mr. Lamb said that Derry had everything: two arms, two legs, two eyes, two ears, etc. He wanted to make Derry realize that he had so much which many other people were deprived of. He added that Derry could accomplish a lot if he determined to do so. Derry asked how was it possible, and Mr. Lamb replied that the same was as he did. Derry asked if Mr. Lamb had any friends, and he replied that he had a few hundred of them. Derry further said that still he lived all alone in such a big house. Mr. Lamb said that everyone was his friend. Many people visited the garden. The gate remained always open. They sat there by the fire in winter season. Kids come to pick apples and pears and to take the honey toffees made by him. Derry said that he wasn't a friend of Mr. Lamb's. He said that Derry was a friend because he had not done anything such that should seize their friendship. Then Derry said that they didn't know each other well to become friends. To this, Mr. Lamb didn't agree. Mr. Lamb did not consider that to be important point. He did not need Derry's particulars before becoming friends with him. Mr. Lamb said that if he wished, he could tell him his name. Derry replied that his name was Derek, but he disliked it and wanted to be called Derry instead. He added that he might not visit the place in future, and then they would not remain friends anymore. To this, Mr. Lamb asked the reason, and Derry replied that one crosses many people while walking down the street, might speak to a few of them, and never see them again. This didn't mean that they had become friends. So, we'll have the story explanation up to here today. Let's check our understanding with these questions. The very first one is, why did Derry come into Mr. Lamb's garden? And why was he startled? What made him got surprised? Why does Mr. Lamb leave his gate or the garden gate always open? Mr. Lamb changes the subject when Derry tells him about how people comment on his burnt face. Why does Mr. Lamb do so? That means, why does he try to change the subject? How does Mr. Lamb try to make Derry understand about life after he hears him how he got his face burnt? Mr. Lamb says to Derry, it's all relative, beauty and the beast. What essentially does Mr. Lamb mean by this expression? So with this, we come to the end of this session.